A Viking walks into a market in Birka on a cool Baltic morning sometime around 950 AD. He wants a length of Frisian cloth, good tight weave, dyed blue. He does not reach into a pocket. He does not produce a purse of coins. He grips the thick silver ring on his left arm, pulls a small iron chisel from his belt pouch, and strikes. The ring splits. He places the cut fragment on one pan of a portable folding scale, balances it against a barrel-shaped lead weight on the other, watches the beam settle level. Transaction complete. His bank account is now visibly lighter on his wrist. That is not a metaphor. That is not a dramatization of something approximate. That is the documented, archaeologically verified, primary source confirmed way that commerce worked across the Norse world for nearly 300 years. Your salary, your savings, and your status were the same object, worn on your body, and you made change with a chisel. If you have ever checked your bank balance on a phone and felt a small flicker of unease that your entire financial life is a number on a screen maintained by an institution you have never visited, controlled by people whose names you do not know, then you already understand the question this story asks. The Vikings answered that question differently. Whether their answer was better is something you will have to decide for yourself. The system that made this possible has a name. Numismatists and archaeologists call it the bullion economy, or more commonly, the hack-silver economy. The principle was simple and radical. The value of silver resided in its weight and purity, not in any image stamped on its surface, not in any king's guarantee, not in any denomination. A twisted arm ring, a Carolingian brooch, an Islamic coin struck in Baghdad, a broken piece of an Irish church fitting looted from a monastery. All of it was evaluated the same way. You put it on a scale. You weighed it. That weight was the price. The form was irrelevant. The metal was everything. This was not primitive. This was not the absence of an economic system. This was a specific, sophisticated solution to a specific problem. How do you conduct reliable commerce across a geographic arc stretching from Newfoundland to the Caspian Sea, across dozens of political jurisdictions, among people who share no common king, no common language, and no common religion? The answer the Norse world arrived at was, trust the silver, trust the scale, trust nothing else. And they had the tools to enforce that trust. Portable folding balance scales, small, elegant instruments with copper alloy arms and iron or bronze pans have been recovered from hundreds of graves and hoards across Scandinavia, the British Isles, Russia, and the Baltic coast. At Birka alone, the Swedish island trading center excavated by Holger Arbman beginning in 1940, over 100 sets of scales and weights were found among roughly 1,100 graves. 1 in 10. These were not specialist merchant tools locked in a guild hall. They were personal equipment carried in belt pouches the way you carry a phone. The ability to verify a silver transaction was a common skill, as ordinary as reading a price tag is now. The weights that accompanied those scales were carefully made, spherical, cuboid, barrel-shaped, and analysis by the archaeologist Unn Pedersen has shown they clustered around consistent values. Not identical. They were handmade and variation existed. But the clustering was too tight to be coincidence. The system was calibrated. The arm rings, too, were not arbitrary in their mass. A common Scandinavian type weighed roughly 100 grams. Smaller rings clustered around 50 and 26. A lord who gave arm rings to his followers was not simply gifting jewelry. He was distributing pay in standardized units. Picture the transaction again, closer now. You are the buyer. You stand at a market stall in Hedeby, at the base of the Jutland Peninsula, one of the largest trading centers in northern Europe. The air smells of tar and fish and the wet wool of 100 people who have been on ships recently. You want something. A sword blade, Rhenish wine, a bolt of silk that has traveled from Constantinople. The seller names a weight. You pull your arm ring forward, judge by eye where to cut. Set the chisel. The ring is twisted silver wire, not polished, not smooth. Raw, worked metal with visible hammer marks. You strike. The fragment falls. You place it on the pan. The seller watches, places his weight on the other pan. The beam does not balance. You add a sliver. The beam settles. But the seller is not finished. He picks up the silver fragment, pulls a knife, and nicks it. A small V-shaped cut into the surface. He is checking that the metal is solid silver all the way through, not copper with a silver wash. If the bright metal beneath the oxidized surface matches the exterior, he nods. If it does not, the transaction collapses. Every nick on a Viking Age piece of silver is a scar left by someone who trusted metal over promises. Some coins in archaeological hoards carry dozens of these peck marks, each one from a different pair of hands, each one a separate moment of verification. This was a decentralized quality assurance system. Every participant was their own assayer. Now, consider what fueled this economy. Over 80,000 Islamic silver coins, dirhams, struck in mints across the Abbasid Caliphate, in Baghdad, Samarkand, and other cities, have been found in Scandinavian soil, with the heaviest concentrations on the island of Gotland. 80,000. That makes Vikings the largest consumers of Islamic silver coinage outside the Islamic world. The coins arrived via the Volga trade route, where Scandinavian traders, the Arab sources called Rus, exchanged furs, enslaved people, honey, and wax for silver at markets along the river system connecting the Baltic to the Caspian. And here is the detail that reframes everything. The Vikings did not use these coins as coins. They did not care what the Kufic calligraphy said. They did not know or care which caliph's name was inscribed. They weighed them. They cut them. They tested them with a knife blade. A dirham's face value in Baghdad was meaningless in Burqa. Its silver content was the only information that mattered. The most vivid outside account of this system comes from a man who saw it firsthand and was horrified by almost everything else about the people who practiced it. Ahmad ibn Fadlan was an Arab diplomat sent by the Abbasid Caliph to the Volga Bulgars in 921 AD. Along the way, he encountered Rus traders, Scandinavians operating deep in the river systems of what is now Russia, and recorded their habits in extraordinary detail. He described their funeral rituals, their hygiene, their physical appearance, but he also described their economics. Ibn Fadlan noted that the Rus women wore neck rings of gold and silver, and that a man's wealth was displayed by the number of rings on his wife's neck. When a man accumulated 10,000 dirhams, he had a neck ring made for her. At 20,000, a second ring. The women walked through the trading camps wearing their husband's net worth in plain sight. An Arab diplomat looked at a Viking woman's neck and realized he was reading her family's bank statement. Another Arab geographer, Ibn Rusta, writing slightly earlier, recorded the same observation from a different angle. The Rus, he wrote, kept their wealth in chains and ornaments on their women, and treated these ornaments as their treasury. There is something unsettling in the way these accounts frame women as display cases for male wealth. Whether Viking Age women had independent economic agency within this system is poorly documented. A few female graves contain balance scales, suggesting some women participated directly in trade. But the Arab sources present the neck rings as a man's achievement measured on a woman's body. The record offers this without commentary, and I will do the same. What the record does make clear is that in this system, wealth was radically visible. A rich man could not hide his fortune. A poor man could not fake it. Your net worth was as public as your face. Think about that for a moment in the context of the world you live in now, where a person carrying $200,000 in debt and a person carrying $200,000 in savings can look identical walking down the same street. The Viking system permitted no such ambiguity. But visibility carried a cost. If you wore your wealth, you advertised your robbery potential. The Viking solution was the hoard. You dug a hole. You buried your silver, arm ring fragments, cut coins, ingots, bent brooches in a clay pot or a leather bag. You memorized the location. You told no one, and you hoped you lived long enough to come back. Gotland alone has yielded over 700 silver hoards. Many were recovered by their owners and spent over time, but many were not. The depositor died, in battle, at sea, on a trading voyage to a river town in the Slavic East, without passing the location to anyone. The silver stayed in the ground. It is still there, somewhere in Swedish soil right now, in a field that a farmer plows every spring. There is a pot of silver that a trader buried 11 centuries ago, intending to return next season. He never did. The hoard was, in effect, an uninsured, zero-interest, single point of failure savings account. If you died without telling someone where you buried your money, your life savings vanished from the economy permanently. No institution preserved it. No record noted your name. The system that gave you total control also gave you total vulnerability. The Icelandic saga tradition captured this anxiety. Egil's saga, composed around 1230 but describing events centuries earlier, tells of the poet and warrior Egil Skallagrimsson burying a chest of silver and killing the 2 enslaved men who helped him carry it, so that no one could find it after his death. The saga is literature, not history, written 300 years after Egil lived, embellished, shaped by narrative convention. But the fear it dramatizes was real. Every orphaned hoard on Gotland is proof. This brings us to the turn in the story that changes what you think you know about progress. Around the 990s AD, Scandinavian kings began minting their own coins. Olaf Tryggvason in Norway, Svein Forkbeard in Denmark, Olaf Skotkonung in Sweden. For the first time, Scandinavian rulers stamped silver with their own images and insisted that these stamped pieces held a fixed value by royal decree. This was not a market improvement. The hack silver system worked. Traders did not petition kings for better money. The kings imposed coinage because coinage served the kings. A bullion economy is nearly impossible to tax. How do you demand a percentage of the silver worn on someone's arm when you cannot see how much they cut off last week? A coin economy, where the king controls the mint and can periodically recall all coins, re-mint them, and keep a percentage in the process, a practice called renovatio monetae, is a royal revenue tool. Minting coins made wealth legible. Legible wealth is taxable wealth. Taxable wealth is controlled wealth. The first Scandinavian kings did not mint coins to help their people trade. They minted coins to make their people's wealth visible to the crown. The transition was not instant. Hack silver and coins coexisted for decades. In England's Danelaw, the regions under Norse control, traders used Anglo-Saxon pennies alongside cut silver throughout the 10th and 11th centuries. In rural Scandinavia, the bullion economy likely persisted well after towns adopted coinage. The boundary between the two systems was porous, not sharp, but the direction was clear. The era of personally controlled, self-verified, body-worn wealth was ending. The era of state-issued, state-controlled, institutionally guaranteed money was beginning. We live in the terminal stage of that transition. Your money is not on your arm. It is not in a pot you buried. It is a number in a database maintained by a bank you may never have physically entered, regulated by a government that can freeze it, insured by an institution that has never met you. You cannot cut a piece off and weigh it. You cannot test its purity with a knife. You verify nothing. You trust everything. And in exchange for that trust, you get something the Viking system could never offer. You get insurance. You get credit. You get the ability to borrow against future earnings, to spread risk across millions of strangers, to recover from theft and loss through institutional mechanisms. The hack silver economy had no credit. The total money supply was limited to the physical silver in existence. If your hoard was stolen, there was no recourse except violence. If you died overseas, your family's wealth died with your secret. Neither system is simply better. Both are answers to the same human problem. How do you store value and exchange it reliably? And both carry costs. The other does not. But there is something that stays with me about those folding scales in the belt pouch. Something about the merchant buried at Birka with his balance and his weights beside his hip. The way we might be buried with the phone we checked 100 times a day. His most essential tool was the one that let him verify reality for himself. No intermediary, no app, no institution standing between him and the metal on the pan. Just the weight, the beam, and the truth of the balance. If you have traveled to Gotland or to the Swedish History Museum in Stockholm, where many of these hoards are displayed, the tangled fragments of arm rings and cut dirhams and bent brooches, the small precise scales with their barrel-shaped weights, you have stood in front of someone's financial life, frozen in the soil where they left it. If you have not been, the objects are there, waiting. The silver is still bright where the peck marks cut through the tarnish. Every nick is a hand that reached across a market stall 1,000 years ago, took a stranger's silver and tested it. Because in that economy, the only authority that guaranteed value was physics. The next time you tap your card or watch a number change on a screen, consider that you are participating in the end state of a process that began when a Scandinavian king decided his face on a piece of metal mattered more than its weight. The Viking with the arm ring and the chisel would not have understood your transaction. But he would have understood your unease. He knew what it meant to wonder whether the silver was real. He just had a way to check.